Hi guys, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. Can you believe we are at the end of chapter 4? After this lesson, we will be finished. And that's as far as we're going to go for this year. Now, we'll have a few more video lessons, but they're going to be reviews and for a test. But this is our last lesson. I can't believe it. We're almost finished. You guys have done awesome with this e-learning. Kudos to you. Keep up that good job. We're almost finished. Okay, so can you remember which president we have been talking about in this chapter? Yes, Thomas Jefferson. We've been talking about him and the impacts he had in America and the things that he participated in and how he made America better. Now, have you ever wondered what his hobbies were? What things did he like? What things did he not like? And what would he be interested in? What did he do when he wasn't working? Well, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some of his hobbies and things that he worked on. And then we're also going to talk about, as you can see up here, we'll talk about latitude, but that'll be at the end of the lesson. So let's get back to Thomas Jefferson. When he was a young child, he was given 5,000 acres by his father. Now, as a little child, you can't do much with it. But when he was 26, he decided to build on it. And he built a house, and he called it Monticello. Okay. Now, he also eventually had a plantation on that. Now, a plantation is a farm. It's usually a big farm. So when you hear people say plantation, most of the time they're talking about a farm or their property or their house. All of their land altogether is called a plantation. And that's what he had. He had a plantation, and he named it Monticello. Now, Monticello means little mountain. So why would he name it Little Mountain? Good question. I'll tell you the answer to that. His family owned a hill, and they lived on a hill. Well, he had one side of it, his 5,000 acres happened to be near the area of a hill where he used to play as a child. It was one of his favorite places to be. So he built his Monticello, his plantation, on this side of this hill, and he called it Little Mountain. That's kind of fun. All right, so some of the things that he did. One big thing he was very interested in was gardening, okay? He was very interested in gardening, and their main crop was tobacco that they grew. But he also grew other things. He grew 330 different vegetables. Let me mark those off. So his main crop was tobacco. He grew 330 different types of vegetables. He also grew 120 different kinds of apples, peaches, and grapes. That is a lot of different things he grew. Now, he grew things that were not very common in America, so not a lot of people had seen them. And other people of other countries heard about Thomas Jefferson's gardens and the crops that he grew. And they would bring him seeds and they would bring him plants for him to plant in his garden. So that's how he got some of these very uncommon foods and plants to grow. Now, something else he did, he kept very meticulous, very specific records on what he grew and how he did it. And because he was so successful at growing all of these different things, he would share his records with other farmers to help them so that they could grow and have a successful crop too. Now, what are the things that plants need to survive? Well, they need soil, of course. They need water, and they need sunlight. Well, the place where Thomas Jefferson decided to put his gardens was on that slope. And on that particular slope, the sunlight was perfect. Even in the winter, it got enough sun to keep the plants warm. Just what they needed to grow and be successful. So that was a lot of his gardening. That was one of his hobbies that he really liked to do. The other one he liked to do was kind of like architecture. Architecture is when you build and design buildings or homes. And that's what he did. He built and designed his house, Monticello. He designed that. And inside his room, he had 43 rooms. I'll mark that off. 43 rooms. He had 8 fireplaces. He had 11,000 square feet. That is huge. Way bigger than my house, let me tell you. It is huge. And that was just the house. And he started his house in 1768, okay? So he started building it in 1768, but he completed it in 1809. Okay, quick, do your math real fast. What is that? How many years? How many years was it? 41 years. So it took him 41 years to finish the house that he built. Now, here's a very interesting fact that he had. He had a pond. Okay, so what's so interesting about a pond? Well, let me tell you the reason he had that pond. Okay, remember, back in this time, they didn't have any refrigerators. So you couldn't keep food fresh for very long. If you had it, you kind of had to eat it that day or the next day because they had no refrigeration. Well, he liked to eat fish. Now, if you have fish, you have to keep it in the refrigerator or it goes bad really quick. They didn't have refrigerators. So what he did is he had a pond on his property. And he kept that pond stocked with fish. Just so whenever he wanted fish for dinner, he could go out to the pond, get the fish, and cook it right then and there. So he almost had like his own little fish farm right there that he could eat from. And that was why he had a pond. I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay, so that was another one of his hobbies, was architect. In fact, he was so good at it, he became one of America's first and finest architects, finest designers and builders of buildings and houses and homes and things. He was known for that. Now, this is huge. Remember, he had 11,000 square feet. Okay, that was his home. And he had 5,000 acres of gardens that he grew things on. Do you think he could do it all by himself? No, he couldn't do it all by himself. Remember, first of all, he's president. Second of all, he worked in the government before he was president. So he is a very, very busy man. And even his wife, this was too much for even his wife to take care of while he's away. So he needed help doing it. So where did he get his help? That's what we're going to talk about now. Instead of hiring help, he bought slaves. So Thomas Jefferson had slaves. In fact, he had about 150 slaves. He had a very large plantation, so he had 150 slaves. Remember, the plantation is the farm or the property that you own. If you had a smaller plantation or a smaller farm, you would have had less slaves. Some of the smaller ones had 1 or 2 slaves, or sometimes they didn't have any. But the bigger the plantation, the more slaves you had. Now, Thomas Jefferson knew that slaves were bad, but he didn't feel it enough to where he got rid of his slaves, because he couldn't run this by himself. He couldn't do his plantation by himself. He didn't know how else to do it. So he didn't think slavery was good, but he still kept his slaves. Now, some of the things that he did do to help prevent slavery, was in those new territories. Remember, Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase as president? He didn't allow new slaves into the new territories, into the new property that America had. No new slaves were allowed to be there. But in the South, they didn't know how to run their plantations without slaves. They didn't know how to do it. So he decided to just let those be. Now, in the future, or I should say in later history, they're going to find that this is a huge problem, and this needs to be dealt with. But Thomas Jefferson kind of eventually just stopped fighting about it, didn't want to deal with it anymore, and decided that as long as the slaves were being treated nicely, then it was okay. And we're going to get back to that in just a moment. So Thomas Jefferson slowed down slavery in that he didn't allow new ones to be had, but he didn't stop the ones that were already there. So now we're going to go back to where he said it's okay as long as they're treated nicely. Let's think about this for a minute, okay, guys? Humans are special because men and women are created in the image of God. They are all God's children. All humans are God's children. So just because everybody else is doing something, and just because an important leader says it's okay to do it, does that mean you should still do it if it's not right? No, we shouldn't. We need to look when issues like that come up, or things like that come up, and they will come up, not so much this one, but other issues that will come up as you grow up, you need to think about that. And it doesn't matter what everybody else is doing, and it doesn't matter what the leaders tell you is okay. Who do we refer to? We refer to God. We look back at God's word, and we let God direct us on what is right and what is wrong. Even if a leader tells us it's right, if God says it's wrong, then it's wrong. And that's something that's we need to think about that always. Oh, whenever a situation comes up that you have to decide if it's good or bad, always go back to God's word. Thomas Jefferson kind of did, but kind of didn't. He stopped them to going into the new territories, but he didn't take care of the ones that were there right then. And that's something that history is going to have to deal with soon. And they will. Our history will be looking into that and taking care of that issue later. Okay, so we talked about Thomas Jefferson and his hobbies and things. So now, one more thing, sorry. I wanted to show you a picture of Monticello, okay? Here is a picture of the house on his plantation. Remember, he built and designed that. And here is a picture of just some of those 5,000 acres of gardens that he has. Now, his plantation and his house are still standing today. In fact, you can go and you can visit it and you can see it and tour it, and it is beautiful. I haven't been there yet, but my daughter has, and she said it is just beautiful to see all of the designs and all the architecture and all of the gardens and learn about all of the different crops that he grew. It's very interesting. So if you're ever in Virginia and you get a chance, go see it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about latitude. Okay, latitude is part of our map skills. We're going to learn a little bit about map skills. Latitude is imaginary lines that run east to west around the globe. Okay, now they're not real. They're just kind of imagined just to help us see the lines, to pretend that they're there. And the reason we have this is it helps us to locate things on the globe. It's like a direction. It's like a map. Finding things. Now, we've learned about the equator. The equator is a latitude line. Okay, it's in the center and it goes around from east to west around the globe. That is 0 degrees. Okay, the latitudes are measured by numbers, and they have this little circle right here. That's a degree. It's just like if you say, oh, I have 103-degree temperature, or my oven is cooking at 350 degrees. That little degree, that little circle is what that means. That's the symbol for degrees. Now, in this degrees, we're measuring latitude, not temperature. But the equator is 0 degrees latitude. Now, everything that is above the equator is going to be north, and everything that is below the equator is going to be south. So here's an example. Here is our 0 degrees. Now this line is red. I know it's hard for you guys to see, but that line is red. That is 0 degrees. That is the equator. When you go above the equator to this line is 20 degrees north. Then you go above that, this one is 40 degrees north. Now go back to the equator. If we go below it, down here, we have 20 degrees south. And then below that one is 40 degrees south. So when you're giving these places, these measurements names, and you use north and south, that's how you know that if it's north, it's above the equator. If it's south, it's below the equator. That's how you know where on the globe to do it. So let me show you a picture of this. Okay, here's kind of a much neater picture of the latitude. Okay, so up here you have the North Pole, and down here you have the South Pole, and right there in that center, it's kind of like a red dotted line, is the equator, and it is at 0 degrees. Okay, 0 degrees. Now, when you go above it, this one is measured, they're going by 15 degrees. The one above it is 15 degrees north because it's above. The next line is 30 degrees north. The next one is 45 degrees north. And up top here is 60 degrees north. Then from the bottom, again, you have 15 degrees south because we're below the equator, 30 degrees south, 45 degrees south, and 60 degrees south. Now, if you look right here on Florida, well, kind of on Florida, the north part of Florida, right in here. This is the United States, right here. There, a little bit right there is Florida. Florida, the north part of Florida is on the 30 degrees north latitude line, okay? Now, these obviously are not on the globe. These are imaginary, just like the equator. You don't actually see the equator line on the Earth. If you're out in space, you can't see these lines. But we draw them on our globes and on our pictures to help give us directions and measurements, okay? All right, now, okay, so that's our latitude. So going over our big picture, we talked today about Jefferson's farm that was called Monticello, okay? That was his plantation, his farm, and it was on 5,000 acres, and he grew all kinds of different crops. We also talked about how he believed slavery was wrong, but he still had slaves. He knew it was wrong, but he didn't stand up for them. He didn't go by God's direction and fight for their freedom the way we are supposed to do, because we are God's creatures, all of us, and we need to protect God's creatures, to the children of God, because we are all children of God. And then we learned that the latitude lines run east and west around the globe. They go side to side. Now later you're going to learn about other lines, but right now we're just learning about the latitude lines that go east to west, side to side around the globe. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to show you our assignment today, and we're going to go over this assignment. I'm going to help you with the top part. Let's hope you guys can read that. You know what? I'm going to get to the darker one so that you can see it better. There we go. Think that's good? Yeah. Okay. And then we're going to read it through. Okay? And I'm going to help you with the top part, and then you need to do the bottom part for your assignment today. So lines of latitude are imaginary lines that run east and west around the globe. These lines measure distances in degrees. The degree symbol is a very small circle after a number. For example, 60 degrees north is written 60 degrees north, 60 with a little circle and then an N. The line of latitude that runs around the middle of the earth at 0 degrees is called the, what is it? The equator, that's right. It is halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole. The other lines of latitude are measured in degrees north or south of the equator. Number 1. What is the line of latitude that is halfway between halfway between the North Pole and the South Pole called? What is it? It's called equator. That's right. It is called the equator. There you go. Equator. All right. And then it says to color this line red. If you're able to print this out, then you can color the line up here red. If you're not able to print this out, that's okay. Don't worry about that. Number 2. What line of latitude runs through the middle part of South America? All right, guys. Let's think about this. Where is South America on the picture of this globe? Right here. Well, we live in North America, so this is South America. So what is the line that runs, the line of latitude that runs through the middle of South America? Well, okay, hold on, let's get real close. There we go. Let's look at it. Here is South America, and that's the line that runs through the middle. So we go to the edge. What is it? It is 15 degrees south, okay? So we would write 15 degrees south. Okay? Just like that. Make sure you put your little degree sign and an S for south. All right, so number 3. How many degrees separate the lines of latitude? Okay, well, let's look at that one. So they want to know how many degrees go from each of these lines. How many are in between each line? Well, this one, the equator starts at 0. What's the next one? 15. That's right. What's the next one? Oops, sorry, wrong one. 30. That's right. So from 0 to 15 is how many? 15 degrees. That's right. So there's 15 degrees in between each one of these lines of latitude. All right. So now on the bottom, number 4, we're going to look at Idaho. Let me see if I can turn this on. There we go. Okay. We're going to look at Idaho right here. And we're going to look at the lines of latitude that are there. Okay, so what 2 lines of latitude is Boise between? All right, so find Boise on your thing right here, on the map. Where is Boise? It is right there. Okay, right there. So what 2 lines of latitude? We have to look at this line. Sorry, guys. This line and this line. What 2 lines are those? Okay. All right. The 2 lines are 43 degrees north and 44 degrees north. Okay. Here is Boise, right here. And the line below it is 43 degrees north. And the line above it is 44 degrees north. So that's where it's located. All right, so now for the rest of your paper, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I want you to answer those by yourself by looking at the latitude lines of Idaho and sending that to your teacher for a participation grade. Okay? All right, if you've got any questions, make sure you email either Miss Powers or me. And I hope you guys have a great day. And the next time we come back, we're going to start a review for our test. All right, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.